Chapter 1. Winter in the Village. Once upon a time, in a quiet little village nestled among snow-covered hills, the winter nights were long and peaceful. Snow fell gently from the sky, blanketing rooftops and meadows in a soft white hush. Lamplight from cottage windows glowed warmly through the twilight, and smoke from chimneys rose in slow curls into the starry night. The whole village seemed to whisper with the sounds of winter, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle sigh of the wind, and the soft crunch of snow under the feet of a late traveler heading home. In this cozy village, there lived a young boy named Nicholas. Nicholas had kind eyes the color of chestnuts and a heart even warmer than the crackling fireplace in his family's cottage. From a very early age, he loved nothing more than to bring happiness to others in small, thoughtful ways. He would share his bread with a hungry bird, offer his scarf to a friend who was cold, and help his neighbors carry heavy baskets of wood for their fires. Everyone in the village knew Nicholas as a gentle soul, always ready with a warm smile and a helping hand. One frosty evening, as twilight painted the snow in shades of blue, Nicholas noticed a tiny sparrow shivering on a bare tree branch. The little bird's feathers were ruffled by the cold breeze and its eyes looked tired. Nicholas carefully approached and extended his mittened hand. To his surprise, the sparrow hopped onto his palm, seeking warmth. With a tender smile, Nicholas tucked the bird inside his coat and brought it home through the softly falling snow. Inside the cottage, by the soft glow of the hearth, he made a little bed of wool for the sparrow near the fireplace. He whispered soothing words as the fire crackled gently, and the bird soon fell into a peaceful sleep, safe and warm for the night. On another night not long after, Nicholas found his elderly neighbor struggling to stack firewood by her door. The snow was deep, and the wood was heavy for her thin arms. Without a word, Nicholas stepped in with his quiet grace to help. Under the pale gold of the street lantern, he lifted log after log, arranging them neatly by her doorstep. The only sounds were the soft thud of wood and their gentle breaths puffing in the cold air. When the chore was done, the neighbor smiled gratefully and patted Nicholas on the shoulder. Nicholas felt a warm glow in his chest, as comforting as the fireplace that would soon burn with that very wood. Each act of kindness, however small, brought Nicholas great joy. At night, he would lie in his little bed by the window, listening to the winter wind whirl softly outside. He pulled his thick quilt up to his chin and gazed at the frost etchings on the glass, imagining shapes of stars and enchanted forests in the delicate ice patterns. Sometimes, as the village slept, he felt a quiet magic in the air, a gentle tingling of hope and wonder that seemed to drift in with the falling snow. He did not know why, but on those nights Nicholas dreamed of beautiful things, of children laughing, of sleigh bells in the distance, and of a world where everyone was cared for and loved. Little did he know that these dreams and his own kindness were weaving together a destiny more extraordinary than any tale told by the village firesides. In the stillness of that winter village, as stars twinkled like tiny lanterns in the sky, the foundation was being laid for something magical. And it all began with the gentle heart of a boy named Nicholas, on a peaceful winter night just like this. Chapter 2. The Toymaker's Gift. Years passed gently, and Nicholas grew from a small boy into a caring young man. He remained as kind and generous as ever, if not more so. Under the guidance of a local carpenter, he had learned to carve wood, turning humble pieces of pine and birch into little wonders. By the light of evening lamps, Nicholas would sit by the hearth with a block of wood and a whittling knife, softly shaving curls and specks onto the floor as a shape emerged in his hands. Perhaps it would become a tiny carved deer, or a doll for a child, or a small wooden flute that could play sweet, quiet tunes. The scent of fresh wood shavings and the resin of pine filled his home as he worked, and the gentle scritch-scritch of his carving was as soothing as a lullaby. One winter, a sickness swept through part of the village, and many families had fallen on hard times. In a modest cottage near the edge of the village lived a family with 3 young children. Their father was away seeking work, and their mother did her best to keep them warm and fed. but there was little left for treats or toys. Nicholas often saw the children peering out of their window at the other boys and girls playing with sleds or dolls in the snow. The eldest child, a girl with bright eyes, tried to keep her younger siblings entertained with stories and songs, but Nicholas could see a hint of sadness in all of their eyes, a longing for a bit of joy to break the long, cold days. Nicholas decided to craft something special for them. Night after night, after finishing his chores, he sat carving by his fire. He chose a beautiful piece of oak wood and slowly, with patient hands, shaped it into a small horse figurine pulling a tiny sleigh. He painted it with whatever few paints he had, a splash of red for the sleigh, a gentle brown for the horse, and tiny white dots like snowflakes along its base. He worked diligently but quietly, pouring love into every detail, imagining how the children's faces might light up at the sight of it. When the toy was finished, Nicholas waited for the perfect moment. On a still, starlit night, he crept to the family's cottage while the village slept. Snow muffled his footsteps as he approached their door. Nicholas gently placed the wooden horse and sleigh on the doorstep, then knocked ever so softly, just loud enough to be heard inside, and slipped away behind an old pine tree. From his hiding place, he watched as the door opened a crack, the mother holding a candle. She looked down and saw the little gift sitting in the glow of moonlight on the snow. With a soft gasp of surprise, she picked it up. Her children gathered around, eyes wide and sparkling with wonder. Though Nicholas was too far to hear clearly, he could imagine their delighted whispers. "Is it for us? Who left it? It's like magic." The next day, Nicholas passed by the cottage to see the children playing in the snow with their new toy. They took turns making the little wooden horse prance through the powdery drifts, pulling its sleigh over make-believe hills. Their laughter rang out, quiet but pure, as they wove stories about the horse and sleigh delivering treats to animals in the forest. Nicholas's heart swelled with happiness. He never stepped forward to claim credit for the gift. Instead, he simply waved in passing and the children waved back cheerfully, not knowing he was their secret benefactor. It was enough for him to see their joy shimmering like winter sun on snow. Word of the mysterious gift spread gently through the village, though no one knew Nicholas was behind it. Some thought a wandering tinkerer might have left it, others murmured perhaps it was a small miracle in the bleak winter. Meanwhile, Nicholas simply kept carving little surprises whenever he found someone in need of cheer. A lonely elderly man found a carved bird on his windowsill one morning, and it warmed his heart. A shy boy received a painted spinning top left by his gate, and soon the boy was laughing and playing with other children. With each secret gift, Nicholas felt that same comforting glow in his chest grow brighter. He discovered that giving brought him a peaceful happiness like nothing else. On quiet nights, as he cleaned his brushes or swept wood shavings from the floor, Nicholas would hum a gentle tune to himself. The village outside might be silent under the snow, but inside his workshop corner, there was the soft rhythm of creation and kindness. The firelight would dance on the walls as he imagined new toys and treats to share. He felt a sense of purpose blossoming within him, guiding him like a lantern through the dark. Though he lived a simple life, Nicholas felt rich in the warmth and love that flowed through his humble acts. Yet, as fulfilled as he was, Nicholas sometimes gazed beyond the borders of his little village, to the dark outline of forests and hills against the starry sky. He wondered about children and families in faraway places who also faced long, cold winters. In his heart grew a quiet wish that somehow he could reach them too, and bring a spark of joy to their nights. It seemed an impossible dream for a single young man with only a small sleigh of his own and a pair of hands whittling toys by the fire. But on one especially serene night, as Nicholas looked at the vast sky full of shimmering stars, he felt a gentle certainty wash over him like a warm tide. Somehow, he simply knew that he was meant to spread happiness far and wide, beyond the bounds of what he could yet see. The universe felt full of promise, as if the stars themselves whispered encouragement. Nicholas closed his eyes, breathed in the crisp air, and made a silent promise to the night. He would find a way to share the joy he knew with the wider world, no matter how long it took or how far he had to travel. Chapter 3: Into the Enchanted Forest. Nicholas set out one crisp morning, his wooden sleigh lightly packed with a few handmade gifts and necessities. He had said goodbye to his village with promises to return, and the villagers wished him well, though they did not fully understand why he felt the need to wander beyond their familiar hills. Nicholas himself could not entirely put it into words, only that gentle tug in his heart urged him to follow the northern stars and see what lay beyond the horizon. The air was cold and clear as he ventured onward, the snow crunching softly under his sturdy boots and the runners of his small sleigh leaving two quiet lines behind him. By day he traveled through white valleys and over frosted creeks, nodding hello to occasional travelers, always with that hopeful spark guiding him forward. By night he camped under fir trees, their boughs heavy with snow, and watched the stars glitter like silver dust across the sky. After several days of northward travel, the landscape grew more wild and the forests more ancient. Tall evergreen trees stood like silent guardians on either side of a narrow path. The branches swayed gently above, and now and then a clump of snow would tumble down with a soft whump. Nicholas pulled his cloak tighter around himself as the late afternoon light waned. A peaceful hush enveloped the woods, broken only by the distant tapping of a woodpecker and the whisper of the wind through the needles. There was a sense of magic here. Nicholas felt it in the crisp pine-scented air and in the way the shadows of the trees stretched long and blue across the snow. That evening, clouds gathered overhead, and a light snowfall soon turned into a heavy curtain of light. Nicholas found himself in the midst of a snowstorm. The wind, though not fierce, blew thick snowflakes around him, obscuring the faint trail. Nightfall came early under the storm's veil. Nicholas remained calm, remembering the familiar lessons of winter. He had weathered many a storm back home by staying patient and seeking shelter. Through the dim swirl of snow, he spotted a rocky outcrop and a cluster of spruce trees pressed close together. Slowly, he made his way there and discovered a small hollow, almost like a little cave formed by the rocks and low-hanging branches. Grateful, he led his sleigh into this natural shelter and brushed the snow off his shoulders and hat. Inside the snug hollow, Nicholas gathered some dry twigs and pine cones from the ground. With flint and steel from his pack, he coaxed a tiny fire to life. The flames cast flickering shadows on the rock walls and created a warm glow that pushed back the darkness. Outside, the snowstorm continued, but the wind's howl was muffled now. Nicholas sat close to the fire, rubbing his hands together for warmth and nibbling on a bit of bread from his provisions. He listened to the sounds of the forest night, the sigh of the wind easing through the trees and the soft huff of snow settling. Then, over the crackle of the fire, Nicholas heard a faint, distressed sound. He held his breath and listened closely. It was a low whine or whimper, almost like a crying animal, carried on the wind. Nicholas's brow furrowed with concern. Taking a burning twig as a makeshift torch, he stepped carefully out of his little shelter and into the snowy darkness, following the sound. Not far from the hollow, near a thicket of berry bushes weighed down with snow, he found the source of the cries. There, struggling to free itself from a tangle of thorny brambles, was a young reindeer. Its fur was a soft brown, and it had a single small antler on one side, the other antler perhaps not yet grown. The reindeer's dark eyes were wide with fear, and it made a gentle snort of pain as it tried again to pull its leg from the stubborn bramble. Nicholas approached slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice so as not to startle the poor creature. "Easy there, friend, it's okay," he murmured, his words clouding white in the cold air. The reindeer calmed slightly at his tone, though it continued to tremble. Nicholas set down his torch in the snow, its flame casting a steady golden light, and carefully moved closer. The bramble bush had wrapped thorny vines around the reindeer's hind leg. Nicholas pulled out a small carving knife from his belt, the same one he used to whittle toys. and very gently began to cut away the thorns. His movements were slow and calm. Now and then, the reindeer groaned softly, and Nicholas would pause to pet its neck and whisper comforting words. "Just a moment more, you'll be free soon." Flake by flake, snow gathered on Nicholas's eyelashes and beard as he worked, but at last he sliced through the final clinging vine. The reindeer pulled its leg free and stepped back, limping only slightly. Nicholas backed away to give the creature space. For a moment, man and reindeer regarded each other in the quiet dark of the snowy woods. Nicholas could see gratitude in the animal's gentle eyes. The reindeer took a tentative step forward and dipped its head, almost as if bowing in thanks. "You poor thing," Nicholas said softly, reaching out to stroke the reindeer's forehead between its small antlers. The creature's fur was cold and damp from the snow, but underneath Nicholas could feel the warmth of its body and the steady beat of its heart. He knew the reindeer might not survive the night alone with an injured leg. Leading it slowly, he returned to the hollow where the fire still crackled. The reindeer hobbled beside him, trusting and calm. Nicholas took one of his wool blankets and gently draped it over the reindeer's back to help it warm up. From his pack he fetched a cloth and dampened it with a bit of melted snow by the fire, then carefully cleaned a small cut on the reindeer's leg where the thorns had scratched it. All the while he murmured gentle reassurances, and the reindeer blinked and relaxed, seeming to understand that Nicholas was there to help. Through that long night, Nicholas shared his shelter with the reindeer. It curled up beside the low fire, and Nicholas occasionally fed it pieces of an apple he had with him, treats the reindeer accepted with soft, snuffling grunts of appreciation. Within their little circle of warmth and light, an unspoken bond formed. Outside, the storm eventually passed, and the snow began to fall more slowly, drifting like silver feathers in the light of a late-night moon. Nicholas stayed awake for hours, tending the fire and watching over his new friend, until finally his eyelids grew heavy. In the silence, he heard the reindeer breathing calmly and felt comforted by its presence. Nicholas smiled to himself, thinking how wondrous it was that his journey into the forest had led him to this gentle creature in need. With that thought warming his heart, he closed his eyes and drifted into a light, peaceful sleep beside the reindeer. When dawn arrived, pale sunlight filtered through the trees, making the fresh snow sparkle. Nicholas woke to find the reindeer already on its feet, nibbling curiously at some ivy that crept over the rocks. It put weight gingerly on its once-caught leg, but seemed much stronger after the night's rest. When it noticed Nicholas stirring, the reindeer stepped forward and nuzzled his shoulder in greeting. Nicholas laughed softly and rose to his feet, giving the reindeer a fond pat. "Good morning to you too," he said warmly. The storm had cleared, leaving the sky a tranquil pale blue. Nicholas knew it was time to continue on his way, but he felt reluctant to part with his new companion. He began packing his sleigh again, tucking away his blanket and dousing the remnants of the fire with snow. To his surprise and delight, the young reindeer did not bound back into the woods as wild animals often do. Instead, it stayed close by his side, watching him with bright, intelligent eyes. Nicholas chuckled. "I suppose you're not ready to say goodbye either," he said, scratching behind its ear. The reindeer tossed its head playfully. In the full light of day, Nicholas noticed that around the reindeer's neck hung a loose collar of soft leather, and attached to it was a tiny silver bell. The bell chimed delicately with the animal's movements, a sweet, tinkling sound like laughter on the wind. This was no ordinary wild reindeer. It must have come from somewhere, perhaps belonging to someone in a far-off place. But how it ended up tangled in the brambles was a mystery. Nicholas felt curiosity stir within him. Could it be that this reindeer was meant to cross his path? He remembered old folk tales from his village about enchanted creatures of the far north, animals that could do extraordinary things and guide lost travelers. He wondered if the silver bell was a sign of such magic. The reindeer gazed back at him knowingly, almost beckoning him to follow. When Nicholas finished readying his sleigh, The reindeer took a few steps forward on the snowy trail, then paused to make sure he was coming along. Nicholas smiled and fell into step behind the cheerful creature, allowing it to lead the way. Together, they ventured through the bright morning woods. The forest that had felt so mysterious in the night now seemed inviting and full of life. Sunlight streamed through the trees in shafts of gold, and birds flitted from branch to branch, their chirps echoing lightly. The reindeer walked with a spirited gait despite its slight limp, its bell jingling softly with each step. Nicholas followed through winding groves and over gentle hills blanketed in white. He realized they were steadily moving uphill, although the rise was so gradual it was hardly noticeable. His breath puffed in the cold air, but he was warm from the exercise and from the quiet excitement of not knowing where the reindeer was taking him. After a time, the trees began to thin. Nicholas noticed a brightness ahead that was not just the gleam of snow, it looked like open sky beyond the forest. His heart quickened in anticipation, though he remained calm and kept walking at the reindeer's side. When at last he emerged from the last line of pines, he found himself atop a broad hill. Nicholas gasped softly at the sight that lay before him. Dozens of quaint cottages with steep roofs dotted the valley below, each roof sparkling under a cap of new snow. They were painted in cheerful colors, deep reds, greens, and blues, and many had chimneys puffing out thin trails of smoke that rose straight into the cold morning air. Winding through the village were pathways lined with lamp posts, and even from afar Nicholas could see the lamps glowing, as if lit even in daylight by some enchantment. What truly caught his eye were the inhabitants, tiny figures bustling about with bundles and carts, even at this early hour. From this distance they looked no taller than children, yet they moved with purpose and energy, their faint laughter carrying on the wind. Nicholas felt a gentle flutter in his chest, a mix of wonder and calm delight. He had discovered a hidden village deep in the wilderness, and everything about it suggested that it was touched by magic. His friend the reindeer snorted happily and began to trot down the slope toward the valley, beckoning Nicholas to follow. With hope and curiosity swelling in his heart, Nicholas took hold of his sleigh and followed, eager to greet this village that had quietly awaited his arrival. Chapter 4: The Little Village of Magic. Nicholas followed the reindeer down the hill and into the enchanting valley. As he drew closer, a few of the tiny figures he had seen from afar came into clearer view. They were indeed elves, small, nimble people with pointed ears peeking from beneath worn woolen caps, and eyes that sparkled with kindness and curiosity. Some paused in their morning chores to watch the newcomer arriving with the young reindeer by his side. Nicholas felt strangely at ease. The gentle atmosphere of the village seemed to welcome him even before a single word was spoken. Near the first cottage at the valley's edge, a group of 3 elves approached. One was an elderly elf gentleman with a fluffy white beard that matched the snow, dressed in a tailored coat of forest green. Beside him stood a cheerful-looking elf woman wearing a red cloak and an apron dusted with flour, as if she had just been baking. The third was a younger elf boy, barely reaching Nicholas's waist, peeking out shyly from behind the others. They all gazed up at Nicholas with warm, inviting smiles. "Welcome, traveler," said the old elf in a voice as gentle as a breeze. He bowed politely. "We don't get many visitors in these parts. And look, you've brought back our missing reindeer." At this, the young elf boy clapped his hands in delight. The reindeer trotted forward, rubbing its head fondly against the elder elf's shoulder. "We were worried about this little one," the elf woman added softly, reaching out to pet the reindeer. She looked up at Nicholas with gratitude. "Thank you for helping our friend." Nicholas smiled and inclined his head respectfully. "My name is Nicholas," he introduced himself, his voice calm and warm. "I'm glad I could be of help. I found the poor thing caught in some brambles during the storm last night." "Ah, Nicholas," the white-bearded elf replied, eyes twinkling. "You have a kind heart, that much is clear. It's a true pleasure to meet you. I am Emil, the elder of this village. He gestured to the elf woman beside him. "This is Marta, who keeps our kitchens cozy, and that young lad behind us is Pip." Pip stepped forward and gave a little wave, his cheeks rosy with excitement. Nicholas noticed that even as they spoke, other elves nearby were resuming their tasks, though many still cast curious glances his way. Some were carrying baskets of firewood or parcels wrapped in cloth. From one open doorway drifted the delicious scent of cinnamon and sugar, and Nicholas spied a tray of cookies cooling on a windowsill. From another direction came the faint sound of a hammer tapping and the whir of a small saw, the gentle sounds of craftsmanship. It was a peaceful, busy village life, yet to Nicholas it felt almost like a happy dream. He had never imagined such a place existed. "Come," Elder Emil said kindly, placing a tiny hand on Nicholas's arm. "You must be cold and tired from your journey. We were just about to have a late breakfast. You will join us, won't you?" Marta beamed and added, "I insist. A warm meal will do you good." Nicholas realized only now that he was indeed quite hungry, and the idea of a warm meal in this snug village made his heart light. He nodded gratefully. "Thank you, I'd love to join you." As they led him along the main path, Nicholas marveled quietly at his surroundings. Though the cottages were small, sized for elf folk, everything was beautifully crafted, doors carved with intricate snowflake patterns, lanterns wrought of brass and glowing with a steady golden light despite the daylight. Elves waved or nodded in friendly greeting as the group passed by. Pip, the young elf, walked beside Nicholas's reindeer, occasionally reaching up to pat its neck proudly as if it were his dearest pet. They arrived at a cozy lodge near the center of the village. Smoke puffed merrily from its chimney, and a carved wooden sign above the door showed a loaf of bread and a steaming mug, likely indicating the village kitchen or dining hall. Inside, it was warm and inviting. Long tables made of polished pine were set neatly, and the fragrant aroma of freshly baked bread, spiced porridge, and herbal tea filled the air. A few elves were already seated, eating and chatting in soft tones. They looked up with mild surprise and then broad smiles at the sight of Nicholas gently ducking through the doorway. Nicholas bent slightly as he stepped inside, removing his snow-dusted cloak. The ceiling was low, but not uncomfortably so, and the space was illuminated by oil lamps and by the flicker of a hearty fire in a stone hearth. Marta ushered him to a seat at the head of a table, where a cushion was quickly placed on a sturdy chair for him. His reindeer companion, not wanting to be left behind, peeked its head through the open door, causing a ripple of laughter among the elves. Pip ran to fetch a bowl of water and some carrots, setting them just outside the door for the grateful reindeer. Nicholas chuckled, touched by the hospitality extended to both him and his animal friend. Soon, Nicholas found himself with a warm mug between his hands, filled with a sweet, milky tea that smelled of vanilla and cloves. Before him was a wooden bowl of porridge topped with spiced fruit and honey, alongside thick slices of nutty bread spread with butter. He ate gratefully, the food filling and comforting. As he dined, he listened to the gentle conversation flowing around him. The elves spoke about simple, happy things, a new batch of jam that had turned out particularly well, a scarf one of them was knitting, the playful antics of a pair of foxes that lived at the forest's edge. Their voices were melodic and soft, and although they sometimes used words Nicholas didn't recognize, he could feel the warmth and friendliness in every tone. After breakfast, Elder Emil lit his pipe, which emitted a pleasant aroma of pine needles, and invited Nicholas to sit by the hearth. Other elves gathered quietly nearby, continuing small tasks like shelling nuts or polishing wooden toys, clearly curious to listen in. "Nicholas," Emil began, "it's not every day that a human finds our hidden village. In fact, it's been ages since we last welcomed an outsider." He peered up at Nicholas kindly. "May I ask what brought you this far north, into our forest?" Nicholas took a moment to reflect, the fire crackling gently as he gathered his thoughts. Outside the small window, the powdery snow still glittered under the late morning sun. I'm not sure I had a single reason I could put into words, Nicholas replied slowly. I suppose I felt a calling, a gentle pull at my heart. I have always loved giving to others and making people happy, especially children. I've done what I can in my own village, but something told me I was meant to do more. So I set out to see if I could find a way to bring joy to folks beyond my home, though I didn't know where the journey would lead. He gave a modest smile. And, well, it led me here, it seems. Marta nodded, her eyes shining, and Pip had inched closer to sit cross-legged at Nicholas's feet, utterly captivated. Elder Emil puffed out a ring of pine-scented smoke and exchanged a thoughtful glance with Marta. Your arrival here is no accident, he said softly. We have a feeling you were guided here, Nicholas. For many years, we too have wished to spread happiness farther than our valley. Emil gestured toward a polished wooden toy that one of the elves had been holding, a charming painted bird with tiny glassy wings. We craft toys and delights, as you may have noticed. Creating them brings us joy, and we infuse each with a bit of magic and love. For a long time, we have given these gifts to the creatures of the forest and to the rare travelers who pass nearby. But beyond our woods, our reach is limited. He sighed gently. We are not built for long journeys in the wide world. We needed a helper, someone who could carry our joy out into the larger world of humans. Perhaps someone like you. Nicholas felt his heart skip, not with fear, but with quiet excitement. I would be honored to help, he said earnestly. In fact, nothing would make me happier. And he truly meant it. In that moment, he realized that all his wandering and hoping had led him to exactly where he needed to be. Here was a village full of kind souls who wanted to give to others, just as he did. It was as if fate had led him straight to the friends and partners he had been looking for. A soft cheer went up among the elves who were listening, and many beamed at Nicholas. Pip quietly pumped a fist in the air in celebration, which made Nicholas laugh softly. Marta dabbed a happy tear from her eye with the corner of her apron, smiling all the while. Elder Emil's face crinkled into a delighted grin. I suspected as much, Emil chuckled. Even before you arrived, there were signs. The northern lights danced especially bright last night, and the stars whispered that a generous soul was drawing near. He took Nicholas's larger hand in both of his tiny, wrinkled ones. Welcome, dear Nicholas. Our home is your home now. Together, we will bring joy to many more hearts. Over the next days, Nicholas stayed in the elf village, learning their ways and sharing his own. The winter days were short but filled with calm, happy work. Nicholas spent time in the workshops, where the elves showed him how they carved toys with impossibly delicate detail, how they wove enchanted doll clothes, and how they stitched sturdy little boots for children with great care. He even tried his hand at their toy making, impressing the elves with his wood-carving skill. Many marveled that a human could create such fine work. Nicholas simply laughed and said he'd had good teachers back home and plenty of practice. In return, Nicholas taught the elves some of his own tricks, like a simpler way to shape a wooden wheel for a toy cart, and a new whistling tune to hum while working, which he swore made the time pass faster. They loved that. Marta shared her favorite recipes with Nicholas, and he helped her knead dough for spice cookies and stirred giant pots of hot cocoa in the evenings, which everyone savored together by the fire. Each night, Nicholas slept in a cozy loft above the bakery, under a thick patchwork quilt the elves had sewn for him. For the first time in his life, he felt truly at home under the northern sky. All the while, excitement built as Nicholas and the elves planned a grand idea. They decided on a special journey, one night each year when, together, they would deliver gifts to children far and wide. They chose the deep of winter, when the nights were longest and the world most in need of warmth and cheer. In the safety of the valley, time seemed to work differently. With a touch of elf magic, they knew a single night could be stretched just enough to circle the whole world, if need be. the elves cheerfully set to work crafting even more toys and treats, pouring their excitement and love into every creation. Tailors stitched warm little dolls and knitted tiny sweaters for teddy bears. Carpenters sawed and sanded rocking horses and toy chests. Painters added bright colors to spinning tops and toy drums, all to be ready for that special night. Nicholas helped gladly, his broad hands surprisingly deft at even the most delicate tasks. His hearty chuckle was often heard echoing through the workshop as he admired each finished toy. He felt like a child again amid the wonder of it all, yet also more purposeful than ever before. One evening, as snow drifted gently outside and the northern lights shimmered in ribbons of green and purple overhead, the elves gathered to present Nicholas with a special surprise. Elder Emil and Marta led him to a small barn at the edge of the village, lanterns in hand. Inside, the barn was aglow with dozens of candles. There, resting on fresh hay, was a magnificent sleigh unlike any Nicholas had seen. The sleigh was crafted from polished oak and reinforced with iron, yet it looked elegant and light. Its sides were carved with scenes of stars and snowflakes and painted a deep, rich red. Attached to the front were leather harnesses adorned with shining silver bells, enough for 8 reindeer to pull it. Nicholas stepped forward, speechless for a moment, and ran a hand along the sleigh's smooth wooden side. It gleamed in the warm candlelight. Emil smiled up at him. "This is for you, for all of us, and for the journey ahead," he said proudly. "Our best craftsmen worked on it, and of course we added a little enchantment, too. It will fly wherever the reindeer guide it." Nicholas felt tears of gratitude prick at his eyes. In his mind's eye, he could already imagine the magical night to come, him riding in this sleigh across the starry sky, delivering happiness to children everywhere. He bowed his head deeply. "It's the most beautiful sleigh I've ever seen," he said softly. "I will do my best to be worthy of it." Next, Marta approached with another gift, a thick winter coat and cloak for Nicholas, tailored in a brilliant crimson red and trimmed with white fur as soft as thistledown. "For those cold winds up in the sky," she said with a wink. Nicholas tried on the coat, which fit him perfectly. The elves clapped quietly as he fastened the shiny brass buttons. Elder Emil then handed Nicholas a matching red hat, pointed at the end and finished with a fluffy white pom-pom. Nicholas laughed in delight as he placed it on his head, the pom-pom bobbing cheerily. He truly looked the part now, every inch a magical bringer of joy, ready for the journey. Near the barn door, the young reindeer Nicholas had rescued gave a proud snort, as if approving of his friend's new look. As Nicholas stood there in his new crimson coat beside the gleaming sleigh, surrounded by his elf friends in the golden candlelight, he felt a deep sense of peace and rightness wash over him. All the pieces of his life, his childhood acts of kindness, his longing to help others, his journey north, and this welcoming village of magic, had come together like the pieces of a beautiful puzzle. Tomorrow night, when all was ready, they would set out on their first grand gift-giving journey. Nicholas gazed at the expectant, happy faces of the elves and said softly, "Thank you, all of you. I feel truly at home and full of hope. Let's bring joy to the world together." A quiet cheer rose in response, and as if on cue, the silver bells on the harnesses jingled merrily in the gentle dark. Chapter 5, The First Night of Giving. At last, the long-awaited night arrived. The elves called it the Night of Giving, a night when joy would secretly sweep across the world. Snow had stopped falling, and the sky was clear and dark, sprinkled with countless stars. Nicholas stood in the center of the village by the great red sleigh, which was now piled high with sacks full of beautifully wrapped toys and gifts. Around him, the elves moved quietly, double-checking lists and securing each sack, their faces filled with anticipation and tender pride. In the crisp air, the only sounds were the occasional muffled giggle of an excited elf and the gentle jingle of silver bells as 8 reindeer were led to the sleigh. Nicholas recognized his young reindeer friend at the front of the team, looking strong and healthy with a bright gleam in its eye. Behind it were 7 more splendid reindeer, each with glossy coats and sturdy antlers. The elves hitched them to the harnesses one by one, whispering calming words and giving pats of encouragement. The reindeer snorted softly and shook their heads, making the bells on their harnesses chime in harmony. It sounded like a delicate carol ringing out under the stars. Nicholas was dressed warmly in the red suit the elves had tailored for him, thick fur-lined coat, sturdy boots, and his pointed red hat. Marta had even packed a satchel of snacks for him to take along: mince pies, a flask of hot chocolate, and a few sugar cookies, in case he needed a nibble during the long night. He felt a mixture of calm and excitement swirling gently inside him. This was the moment he had dreamed of, the moment all of them had worked towards together. Elder Emil approached Nicholas as he finished checking that the last sack was snug in place. The elder elf's eyes shone in the lantern light. "Everything is ready," Emil whispered. He reached up and pressed something into Nicholas's hand, a beautifully carved wooden flute. "A parting gift," Emil said softly. "In case you need a bit of music among the stars." Nicholas closed his fingers around the flute and smiled. "Thank you," he replied softly. He tucked the flute safely into his coat pocket, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. Marta stood by with a thick scarf, which she wrapped snugly around Nicholas's neck. Pip held up a lantern so Nicholas could see as he climbed into the sleigh's broad seat. Nicholas took the reins in his gloved hands. The leather was supple and strong, and he could feel the eager energy of the reindeer through the gentle tugging and stamping of their hooves in the snow. Quietly, every elf in the village gathered around to send them off. They huddled in warm coats and waved, their faces upturned and full of love. Nicholas felt a swell of emotion. He raised a hand and gave a little wave back. "Until morning, my friends," he said softly. Elder Emil gave a bright smile and stepped back to clear the way. Nicholas took a deep breath of the cold, refreshing air and spoke gently to his team. "All right, my friends," he murmured to the reindeer, "let's go." He flicked the reins ever so lightly and made a soft clicking sound with his tongue, remembering how farmers back home urged their horses on, hoping this was polite enough for magical reindeer. The reindeer seemed to understand at once. They started forward at a trot, the sleigh gliding behind them across the snow. Nicholas felt a thrill as he realized how smoothly the sleigh moved. The trot became a canter, and in a few heartbeats the lead reindeer leapt gracefully into the air. One by one the others followed, until the entire sleigh lifted off the ground as if weightless. Gasps of joy rose from the elves below as they watched Nicholas and the team ascend. Nicholas laughed in quiet astonishment, gripping the reins as the village fell away beneath him. Up they rose into the night sky. The cold air rushed past Nicholas's face, but he was snug in his coat and hardly noticed the chill. Below, the white forests and fields spread out like a patchwork quilt under the moonlight. The starlight and the soft glow of the moon made the snow shimmer. The only sounds were the swoosh of the sleigh's runners through the sky and the gentle jingling of the reindeer bells. Nicholas's heart was so full that he hummed a little tune, the same one he often hummed by his fireplace at home, and it sounded almost like a lullaby against the background of the night. They soared over mountains and forests, and soon Nicholas saw the lights of a small village glowing below like a cluster of stars on Earth. He gently guided the reindeer downward. As they descended, rooftops became distinct, and Nicholas picked out a wide, snow-covered field on the outskirts of the village, quiet and undisturbed. The sleigh touched down soundlessly, and the reindeer shook their bodies, sending a small spray of snow into the air. Nicholas stepped out onto the field, the snow coming up to his shins. In the distance he could see the dark shapes of cottages and houses, smoke curling faintly from their chimneys even at this late hour. Nicholas fetched a large sack of toys from the sleigh and slung it over his shoulder. The first house he approached was a humble cottage with a thatched roof. Through a small window, he saw a faint glow, likely a dying fire in the hearth, and he imagined a family inside, fast asleep. The door was locked for the night, and Nicholas did not wish to disturb anyone by knocking. Then he noticed the chimney. No smoke was rising, meaning the fire inside was now only embers. He recalled how the elves sometimes slipped into homes through chimneys to leave surprise treats. With a hopeful heart, Nicholas decided to try. In an instant, the same gentle magic that let the reindeer fly seemed to guide him as well. He rose up, as light as a snowflake on the breeze, and floated straight down the chimney. Nicholas found himself inside the cottage's main room, stepping quietly out of the hearth. The room was dim, lit only by the soft orange glow of the last coals. His boots made only the faintest sound on the stone floor. In the corner stood a small fir tree decorated with dried cranberry garlands and a few homemade ornaments, perhaps a tradition of this family during winter. Nicholas smiled at the sight. Under the tree, there was nothing but a few pine cones the children had collected. He reached into his sack and pulled out a wooden toy horse, painted gentle brown with a red saddle, one of the treasures made in the elf village. He also took out a knitted doll with a tiny shawl. Quietly, he placed both gifts beneath the little tree. Above the hearth hung 2 woolen stockings, drying from the day's snow play. Nicholas tucked a peppermint stick candy into each stocking, the curved red and white confections peeking out merrily. Before leaving, Nicholas noticed on the table a plate with a few cookies and a small mug of milk. Perhaps the family had left a snack out as part of their winter custom, never expecting a mysterious visitor to actually come. Nicholas chuckled softly. He broke off a tiny corner of a cookie and popped it into his mouth. It was delicious and sweet. Then he took a small sip of the milk and whispered, "Thank you, and happy winter, little family." With his sack now a bit lighter, Nicholas floated back up the chimney as effortlessly as a wisp of smoke, and rejoined his sleigh. From rooftop to rooftop, house to house, Nicholas traveled through that village, and then on to the next and the next. The reindeer carried him quietly from one town to another, across frost-laden fields and sleeping forests. Whenever they arrived at a new home, Nicholas would glide down a chimney or slip in through a keyhole with a touch of elf magic, leaving behind gifts and the gentle warmth of love. He moved in a hush, careful not to wake even a single child or disturb a single dream. In each home he visited, he took a moment to look upon the sleepers, rosy-cheeked children snug in their beds, and weary parents who had struggled through a hard year, and he hoped that these small gifts would bring comfort and joy when morning came. As the night went on, Nicholas saw wonders from his sleigh. He flew over tiny hamlets blanketed in snow, where church bells would soon ring out at dawn. He crossed over dark forests where wolves and deer slept curled up in hidden hollows, the wild world at peace. He even skimmed low over a great city by the sea, its harbor silent and rooftops glittering with frost. Above every place, the same stars shone down, watching his journey with their cool, ancient light. Nicholas felt connected to all the world in those moments, from quiet farms to sleeping cities. All were under the same sky, and all held children that deserved happiness. At times, Nicholas gently played the wooden flute that Emil had given him. Soft notes danced out into the night, blending with the hush of the wind. Far below, a drowsy shepherd on a hill might have heard a faint, sweet melody drifting by, but it was as natural and soothing as the breeze, and he would have fallen back asleep, dreaming of distant music. When the sack in his sleigh was nearly empty and the first pale shimmer of dawn began to appear on the horizon, Nicholas turned the reindeer team back toward the north. They had delivered joy to countless homes in one wondrous night. Yet Nicholas's heart remained humble, hoping only that each present would bring a smile and a feeling of love when morning came. As the sun's early light touched the sky with pink, the sleigh set down gently in the hidden valley of the elves. The village was aglow with soft lantern light as the elves, who had stayed up through the night awaiting his return, came running with quiet cheers. Nicholas, weary but joyful, stepped from the sleigh. The moment he did, he was surrounded by warm embraces and pats on the back from the elven folk. "Welcome home," Pip whispered excitedly, careful not to make too loud a fuss. Marta handed Nicholas a steaming mug of spiced tea and draped a warm blanket around his shoulders. Elder Emil's eyes glistened with pride as Nicholas gave a contented nod. "It was beautiful," Nicholas said softly. "Every bit of it." And that was all he needed to say. The elves understood completely. As the sky grew brighter, Nicholas found himself fighting a comfortable drowsiness. He had been awake all night, after all, flying and delivering joy. The elves gently urged him toward the bakery loft where his bed waited. Nicholas climbed a little ladder to his loft and sank into the soft feather mattress. Outside the round window by his bed, the last stars were fading in the morning light. He let out a long, contented breath. Children all over would be waking soon to find surprises, and that thought filled him with deep peace. As his eyes drifted closed, he heard at the edge of hearing the faintest echo of sleigh bells, or perhaps it was only a dream. Smiling to himself, Nicholas fell into a deep, gentle sleep, the happiest he had ever known. Chapter 6: A Timeless Legend. The years flowed on like a gentle stream, and Nicholas, now known far and wide by many names, continued his loving work each winter. Every year on the night of giving, which people in different lands began to call Christmas Eve, he would set out with his faithful reindeer in a sleigh brimming with toys. The elves, still hidden in their cozy northern village, worked all year with cheerful hearts to help him prepare. In return, Nicholas always brought back stories of smiling children and grateful families, which the elves cherished like precious gems. As time went by, the legend of the kindly gift-bringer spread across villages, towns, and countries. At first, people spoke in hushed wonder of mysterious presents that appeared on winter mornings. Then they began to give this benevolent figure a name. In some places, they called him Father Christmas, and in others Saint Nicholas, after the kind-hearted man they imagined must be behind the miracles. In one country, his story mingled with their language and he became known as Santa Claus, a name that seemed to sparkle with merriment. By one name or another, children everywhere came to know and love the idea of this jolly, unseen visitor who traveled the night skies to bring them joy. Nicholas himself grew older in years, but the magic of the elves kept him strong and spry. His hair and beard, once chestnut brown, turned snowy white over the decades, but his eyes never lost that youthful twinkle of kindness. He remained humble, gentle, and mirthful. In fact, he grew to embody the very spirit of generosity and good cheer, laughing often with a warm, "Ho, ho, ho," that would rumble like soft thunder and set children giggling with delight. On quiet nights at the North Pole, for eventually, Nicholas made his permanent home in the far snowy north, where the elf village lay hidden, one could often hear the faint sound of hammering and laughter echoing from his workshop. Even as the world changed through the centuries, Santa, as he came to be called most affectionately, kept alive the simple magic of giving. He and the elves continued to make toys not out of obligation, but out of love, believing that every child deserved a moment of wonder and every family a bit of light on a dark winter night. To this very day, on each Christmas Eve, Santa Claus flies out in his reindeer-drawn sleigh under the same timeless stars. He moves across the sky in a hush, visiting homes big and small, in cities and countrysides, never forgetting the little village where he began. Children still hang their stockings by the fireplace in hope, and Santa still fills them with treats and surprises before the morning light. And if you listen very closely in the deep of the night, perhaps when you are snug in your bed, eyes heavy with sleep, you might hear the faint tinkle of sleigh bells drifting from the clouds, or the echo of a gentle laugh carried on the breeze. That is the story of how a boy named Nicholas became Santa Claus, the gentle guardian of holiday cheer. It's a story that lives in every act of kindness and every spark of wonder during the winter season. And as the world slumbers in the peaceful hush of Christmas night, we are reminded that at the heart of it all is a simple, abiding truth: generosity, love, and magic, the very gifts that Santa carries, have a power that endures through all time, shining warmly like a guiding star in the night sky.